Hi, my name is Yaari. I'm St. Lawrence Island, Yupik, and what I'm doing right now is I'm getting ready to sew on one side of the yo-yo, so you can learn how to do that step by step. The first thing I'm doing is I'm cutting around the edges. You want to make sure that you are following the lines, the marker around this, because it makes a difference when you're sewing it together. So you want to make sure that you have a nice project. So it makes a big difference on how you cut it. So, okay, I think that's good enough. So the first thing you want to do before you sew this together, you want to make sure that you use this string right here, because this is going to be for your yo-yo. And I'm going to make it about that long, maybe a couple of feet long, and you want to make some tight knots at the ends on both sides, because when you sew it together at the top, when you sew it shut, you want to make sure that this doesn't pop out from the top. That's why you have to make knots, a couple of them at least. So you do it on both sides. So what I like to do when I'm skin sewing, I'll show you here in a second. All right, so this right here where the knot is, you're gonna put it right here in the top before you sew it shut at the top. See? So that's the string that goes at the very top there. And you're gonna sew it shut. You gotta make sure this piece of string is already in there, because that's what you need. That's what makes it a yo-yo. I'm gonna stitch through the inside first, going through the front so you don't see the knot. Sewing it shut, you wanna make sure you poke through the leather side, because you don't wanna show this knot showing on the outside. It just makes the yo-yo look prettier. And then now you're gonna close it. So you gotta make sure that the string is not wrapped around the thread. Make sure it's nice and secure. And then now that you're finished securing the end of that, you can go in and out. And make sure you guys use a thimble. I'm very experienced sewing without a thimble, and I also use my nails too, so it helps a lot. Once you get to the other side, then you can do a loop. I like to do it twice over, so I'm gonna go back this way, because now I'm gonna sew this together to the end there. So when you're sewing this top piece, you want to make sure you start from this corner right here where it opens up. See, now the string is nice and secure. It won't pop out. All right, now that you're at the end of it, Usually for beginners, what I ask the beginners to do is I want to make sure that they put at least one stitch through here and then tie a knot to secure it in place, so that when you sew it together, it doesn't sew like this, because it's going to be off.
Yeah.
So you want to put a stitch here, and I'm going to go ahead and do that just to show them what I'm talking about, so they can do that. I'm going to use that thread, so I'm going to leave that alone. But since I'm not a beginner, I don't need to do that. But for people who are beginner skin sewers, they need to do that so that the project doesn't come out crooked. They don't sew it together crooked. I'll do the knot again so you can see what I was doing earlier. You're going to take the end of this thread, pinch it with your thumb and your pointer finger against the needle. Not too tight, and then you're going to pinch it where you wrapped it, pinch it hard, tight enough, and then pull to the end, and there's your knot. So I'm just going to use this to secure this in place, and then when I get to the bottom there, I can undo this. I can cut it off, because then I don't need it. You're going to do a 1 loop stitch, just 1 loop. This is called loop stitching right here. And that's how you're going to do this entire project. You're going to do loop stitches just like you're seeing me do right here. And then I'm going to tie a knot. 1 knot is okay, because I'm not going to use this stitch permanently. I'm just using it to hold it in place at the end there. 1 knot is okay. And then I'm going to put this aside and save it for the other side. And then go back to this first thread. When you have a hard time putting that through, it's okay to cut the end of it, because the thread starts unraveling when you keep doing that. You don't want it to do that. All right, now that this end is secured in place, before you start stitching it, you see what I'm doing? You don't want to sew it like this. You don't want it to be just like you see here. You want to make sure that it's nice and aligned on both sides. You're going to do loop stitching. This part is okay, right? And if you have a little bit, but you want to make sure that you take care of it from the beginning so it doesn't do that. You're going to do loop stitches all the way down to the bottom. And you don't want to make your stitches too far apart. All the way down. You don't want to do really close stitches, then far wide stitches. You don't want to do that. You want to try to do them same all the way down. And when you do your stitches, you want to make sure that there's space between the thread and the edge. You don't want to do your stitches too close to the edge, because if you pull on the thread, it's going to break right through the leather or the skin. Notice how I'm using my middle finger to hold this in place when I do my stitches. It helps me to perfect my stitches when I do that. Use my middle finger to hold the thread in place. There's my stitches. They're about the same length apart. That's exactly how you want to do it. Experienced skin sewers can make a pair of boots in probably 2 days, 5 days, 1 week. Depends on how much time you have on your hands. See, I'm proud of my stitches. They look nice. Oops. See this right here? Make sure you pull on it so it doesn't tie a knot. Now I like to wet it a little bit to make sure it doesn't make a knot by accident. Notice how on each side they're aligned together? One side is not longer than the other. That's why you need the secure stitch for beginners, beginner skin stitchers. We're almost to the end. So what I'm gonna do now is, because I'm really close to the end, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one stitch off right here, because I'm done using that, holding it in place. I'm gonna go ahead and pull it out. There it is. We don't need that support anymore, so I got rid of it. All right, now we're gonna start sewing this piece on in the bottom here. Notice how it's nice and aligned. One side is not longer than the other. And you're gonna do exact same kind of stitching for this round piece in the bottom here. I'm gonna go through here first, go back on the other side, and stitch right through the leather piece. Oops. All right. Now we're gonna sew this shut. But when you're halfway through, you want to make sure you stop, because now you have to use those fillers and fill your yo-yo. Real nice stitches. What you can do also is you can take this and sew it over here to secure it in place. I think I'll go ahead and do that. I forgot to do that. We'll do the same thing we did as the bottom piece right here. You want to make sure that your yo-yo in the bottom is as round as possible. Round like a ball. I'm going to make my secure stitch right here. Do a loop stitch. Tie one knot. Always save this thread because you're going to need it for that. Alright, so I'm just showing you guys that the leather and the skin are both aligned together. So I'm doing pretty good with my stitching. The stitches look really nice. How you cut. Now you understand why it makes a difference on how you cut out the leather and the skin. Because everything has to do with measurement. It's kind of like doing math. I'm almost to that one secure stitch. I'll stop there and I'll use a new thread. All right, let me undo my secure stitch right here. Don't accidentally cut the wrong thread. Then you'll have to start all over from the top. There it is. Last stitch, and then I'll start filling it and replace my thread. There's my stitches. Looks nice. When you do your knot, you want to make sure that you use your thumb and you hold it down, you pinch it, so that your knot is at the very end. You want to make sure you do that. I'm going to do at least 3 knots. And make sure it's nice and tight. And then you cut. What I usually do is I use a lighter and burn this almost to the very end. You don't want to make sure that you don't burn your knot off. All right, so now I'm gonna start filling this. You want to make sure you fill it before you close, you sew it shut. That's what I like to use, is I pinch it to check to see if I filled it enough, because you don't want a lot of room in there. See, it's getting better. So I'm gonna fill it as far as there until I get about halfway done with my stitching. Then I'll fill it more and close it shut. And I'm gonna start where I left off. So where you want to start is right where your stitch is. You're gonna poke through there. Actually, I'm gonna do it from the inside because I don't want my knot to show on that leather piece. So I'm gonna put the stitch on the inside and go right through there. And then do the same process all the way across. And then when I'm done, I'm gonna find a lighter and burn this little piece right here, if you want your yo-yos to look nice. See, if I wasn't holding it in place when I do this, let me show you what I'm talking about. The thread, this is what I call holding in place. If I wasn't doing this, my stitches would look real crooked. I hold it in place to perfect my stitches. If you do that without holding it in place, your stitches will look all kinds of weird ways. It wouldn't look nice. Your stitches wouldn't look as nice. You can see this one that looks kind of funny because I didn't hold it in place. Notice how the fur side looks a little bit longer than that side. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that you can pull this leather, just stretch it out a little bit so that it's not, to make sure that it's aligned on both sides when you sew it shut. Pull the leather and pinch this in or push it in. Like I said, there's a lot of little tricks that you have to know. Hold that in place. Now that we're closer to the end, I'm going to go ahead and start filling it some more. See how it's harder to pinch up here? I want to make sure that it feels hard, not soft. I'm going to go ahead and sew it some more, a few more stitches, then I'll fill it some more. See how nice and round it looks on the bottom. When you're filling it, you want to make sure you're filling all parts. Right here it feels a little bit empty, so that means I need to push more filling on that side to make sure it fills. Yeah, that feels a lot better. You'll just know instinctively where you need to fill more. See how much filling you use for just one side? I'm going to go ahead and do a few more stitches, and I'll put some more fillers. I want to make sure that I fill this side. Once you really fill it up, it gets a little bit more challenging to do the stitches because the filling is making the yo-yo pretty full, and therefore making the stitches a little bit more challenging. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and fill it a little bit more. Notice how there's a big bump on one side? That means you need to fill on this side more. There it is. I like to use my needle and push in the filling. Let me see my stitches. We're almost done with this. Then I'll show you how to sew on the handle, because you need a handle on the yo-yo. One last stitch. All right. We are done sewing on one side. So basically you do exactly the same thing on the other side, what I just did with this one. Now you understand why it's important when you cut it out, you have to follow the lines exactly. You want to make sure the measurement is correct. Okay, I did about 3 stitches. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of move the filler around inside. Make sure it looks nicer. And there you have it. There's your one side of the yo-yo. So now when you do the handle, you want to make sure that one side is longer than the other. When you sew on the yo-yo, the other side is going to be hanging on longer than the other side. When you do your handle, that's where you want to sew it. Or if you don't want to sew a handle on, you can even tie a knot at the top. I mean, right where it is. And that could be used like a handle. And that's it. And then you sew on the other side, and there will be your yo-yos right there. That will be used like your handle. There you have it, folks.